decarbonizing.com.
So guten Morgen and hello to all our viewers. My name is Kapil Narula and I am your host for this series on energy system transitions. In this session, we'll explore some aspects of heat decarbonization with a specific focus on Austria. Today, we are indeed fortunate to have our esteemed guest, Dr. Christian Holter, the CEO of Solid Solar Energy Systems, headquartered at Graz, Austria. Dr. Holter is a doyen and a pioneer in solar heating and cooling, having 30 years of experience in designing, building, and operating solar thermal plants worldwide. He is a globally recognized expert and a champion of solar heating and cooling. Indeed, there is no better person to speak about decarbonizing the Austrian heating sector. We extend a cordial and hearty welcome to you, Dr. Holter. We are also privileged to have amongst us Professor Günther Getzinger, who teaches at the Graz University of Technology and at the Alpen Adria University, Klagenfurt. He is the co-founder and the past director of IFZ, which is an interdisciplinary research center for technology, work, and culture based at Graz, Austria. He is also the founder and the managing director of the Institute for Advanced Studies on Science, Technology and Society, IAS-STS, who is hosting me as a visiting fellow. Professor Getzinger was a member of the Styrian Parliament in the 1990s and a spokesman for science, culture and environmental affairs for the Social Democratic Party, apart from being a member of the City Council of Graz from 2003 to 2008. He is therefore a catalyst of energy system transition with strong linkages to technology, policy, and society. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Getzinger. So to kickstart our proceedings, I would first like to ask Dr. Holter that in many photographs which are available online, I have seen you wearing a motif of the sun on your coat or on your clothes. That is literally wearing the sun on your sleeve. Can you please throw some light on how this started and maybe turn around to see what I'm talking about?
Well, today I'm wearing the sun at my back.
Okay.
So when I come, the sun is always shining.
Great.
And it forms some part of corporate identity, and, well, it simply expresses about backgrounds and gives a nice picture for the people around. And giving you a fun story, I was once in a project with World Bank and was there quite often. And after 5 weeks, suddenly a guy came out of his office and said, "I saw you with this jacket passing by all the time the last days. What are you doing actually?" So people really recognize it as a brand.
Right. So I hope to see more people wearing photographs of windmills and something else which encourages solar as well as renewable energy. So Professor Getzinger, I would like to ask you that Austria has demonstrated exemplary leadership and ambition to commit to a goal of net zero emissions by 2040. But given that in 2018, the share of fossil fuels in the Austrian primary energy mix was about 68%, what are your initial reactions on this high level of ambition?
Initial reactions? Wow. Not easy to be achieved, but achievable. Depends very much on politics, on policy, and economic actors on the market of energy. But I would say the freshest World Energy Outlook of IEA shows that it is possible. There is a scenario called net zero carbon by 2050, And I would say, taking into account the circumstances here in Austria, the preconditions here in Austria, we are well off, and we are able to achieve the 2040 goal. Why? The boss of IEA showed the direction. He said solar will be king the next
That's right.
10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And we are not very, very well developed in using solar energy here in Austria. I would say that's, I don't know, maybe 1% of our energy consumption, maybe 2%. It's very low. I don't know the exact figure, but I see many possibilities on rooftops, but also big solar.
Right. So moving on to big solar, Dr. Holter here has worked on big solar grass and also many other big solar plants. So Dr. Holter, I would like to ask you that the share of renewable energy in heating and cooling in Austria has increased notably from 20% in 2004 to about 34% in 2018. In your opinion, what are the main energy sources and technologies which will help decarbonize the Austrian heating system?
Well, the available sources are actually a quite small number we do have. So the first thing, besides savings and efficiency, which we'll cover later on, is using waste heat, using energy that is available anyway, and bringing that to a good use. But then when we come that we need different fuels to power renewable heat, we do have solar heating and cooling, we do have biomass with all the different types, including wood chips, biogas, biodiesel, and all of that, which are direct sources we can use. Then when we look at the heating sector, we have the very interesting discussion about all the possibilities of electrification in the heating sector, which play in this through heat pumps, to direct electric heating, through transforming electricity to green gas or hydrogen and all of that. And this might add at certain parts, but we need to be careful putting the right role onto that. And actually, these are our main sources. It's not much more we have left when you group that into the different sources, and we do have limits on that. We do not have endless availability on biomass. We do not have endless availability on green electricity to run the heating, the electrification on that. We do have, compared to plenty, sunshine.
Right. So, Dr. Holter, you have also famously said that electrification of heating is one of the biggest mistakes of energy transition. And my research shows in the context of Switzerland that while electrification of heating is a right way possibly to go ahead for countries like Switzerland and Austria, which have a high share of renewable energy in electricity. But otherwise, my research shows that solar thermal is the most efficient and the cheapest way to especially decarbonize space heating and domestic water heating. So, unfortunately, we see that in the past few years, solar PV is sort of winning the race and has taken a lead over solar thermal. Could you briefly elaborate on the reasons and what needs to be done to reverse this trend?
So the advantage you see on the renewable electricity, here we see that solar PV, wind energy have really reached a very professional level of technology. Those are today commodity technologies, easy to get, easy to buy, easy to understand investment cases. So this is a market where you have, which seems to be a very low risk approach. From this perspective, if you look at our demands, in most European countries, you have roughly 20% of the final energy demand in the sector of electricity, 30% in mobility, 50% in heating cooling. Now, just taking into account that, if you want to put this 50% heating cooling into the electricity, that would actually mean, even if we gain plenty efficiency, if we get good COPs in different processes, it means for sure doubling up the electricity on the renewable side, and actually seeing the path just to cover our current electricity, 100% by renewable production at every part of the year is a huge challenge, because you do have situations where you have surplus in summer, typically in Austria and Switzerland as well as I think, with a lot of hydropower, a lot of solar PV. But then you have the winter times where you have wind, but you have almost no solar PV. You have little hydro because the rivers go down, and then we face the situations that we get our electricity from fossil or nuclear sources. And when we focus on our heating, exactly this is the same time when we have the big demand of heating. So we have a total mismatch between the renewable electricity, peak production, and the heating demand side. So this is the limits we have in putting this together. And what are the things we need to do to get the renewable heating and solar heating on the stage? I think we have a good level of technology development. We are in a phase where we could immediately go out and distribute projects, distribute the technologies, especially when we talk about solar district heating in combination with seasonal storage, which considers solar. The thing we need for that is pilot projects. There are a few showcases around in Denmark, in China, and in Canada. So these are projects which are real life. We miss two steps. The one is into other countries. The second is to scale up from small-sized cities to big cities. And focusing specifically on that, if you check out the medium and big cities all over Europe, the district heating supply is totally fossil-based. So renewable district heating you find in plenty small villages, small cities, but the bigger the cities, the higher typically are the fossil shares. And this is a huge target, and you can look at Eastern Europe, you can look at Austria, you can look at Germany, you will find the same patterns almost everywhere.
So, as you are hinting at the temporal mismatch between heating demand and supply, there is a need for, as you said, heat storage and integrating large-scale seasonal heat stores in the heating system. But experience shows that except for Denmark and maybe some places in Austria, Germany, and possibly Netherlands, and some places in Canada, there have been no large-scale heat stores which have been integrated in the heating system. What do you see are the challenges in that?
I think in the past we didn't simply have the need and the focus for that. We had fossil fuels which were easy to store, which were easy to burn at the time of use, so no one was requiring a big heat store. That was very special applications only. So this is the reason why we didn't have a strong technology focus on that, and no one was really pursuing to develop heat storage to a very professional market. We are now at the point where we want to have the backbone of the energy system based on renewables, which means we have changing supply conditions. We have very volatile situations between supply and demand. And exactly this puts us now in a strong requirement to get storages both on short and long term on a new and professional level. We are involved in R&D projects in regards of that. We are working with engineers and companies who have built these storages, and I would say this is not rocket science. We can do that. We do have a good basis for that. There's networks around, there's plenty of knowledges. We have to work cross-cutting in technology. So we partner suddenly with companies which previously have been working in waste management, with building landfills, building hydropower plants, because they need some similar construction patterns than a seasonal heat storage. We work with companies that make lines for landfills. We work with material scientists who work on different plastics and long-term stability. So we simply have a new team of scientists and technicians sitting together, getting that storages moving forward. I think we can do the storages already today, but definitely there will be a technology development over the next decade, putting things on a better and more efficient and cheaper implementation.
Right. Thank you so much. Professor Getzinger, there is likely to be an increase in the price of heat as renewable energy is integrated into heating. So I would like to ask you that do homeowners in Graz and Austrian citizens in particular understand the financial implications of such a transition? And how do you perceive the willingness to pay of citizens? Do you see public resistance to higher prices of heating?
Well, willingness to pay is just a figure, and I don't know that figure. We could try to calculate it, because willingness to pay is just to ask the people if they are willing to pay and how much. And I'm sure reminding them that the transition to renewables, also with heat, will not be for nothing. There is willingness to pay. So prices of heat will ramp up, will go up next years. The crucial question is how steep, how much, and when exactly. But with the argument that you say you are decarbonizing heat delivered within district heating systems, and I think the main issue is district heating with these medium and larger cities in Austria and in Europe. I think this is the core issue, the core question, how to decarbonize that kind of heat. And talking to the people about this, I'm sure there is willingness to pay, as it is with electricity. I'm paying already for eco-electricity with my bill, and that's not a problem for me. Of course, it has to be socially balanced. That means there have to be exemptions with poor people. We do have a serious problem with energy poverty, also in Austria, everywhere in the world. And even if there would be willingness to pay, there's just no money. So we have to find ways, but that's not so complicated. We are very experienced in social policy, so we know how to shift the loads, the pressure from poorer people to those who are well off. So I do not see social policy problems in this. Of course, there is always some resistance against higher prices. Always. Doesn't matter if it's milk, meat, or heat. So maybe there will be some struggle about that gradient of this going up, but in principle, there is enough willingness to pay. You have to show what you are doing with the money.
Right. So you see a just transition coming in for Austria, and people being involved voluntarily or with support measures towards this willing to pay higher for the price of heat.
Yes. As mentioned, I do not see fundamental problems. I see problems in detail and problems in circumstances regarding the laws and so on, but this will be managed and should be managed within a few years.
Right.
So time is running off.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Actually, when you make a long-term picture, I do not see that renewable technologies are more expensive than the fossil fuels we use today, even not including carbon costs, etc. So we've done plenty calculations on the average costs of heat over the lifetime of the system, and this is exactly where we have the natural gas today. Now, for sure, this does not make an investment case.
Right.
No investor will invest in a system which just pays for itself over a lifetime and doesn't give benefits to him. So yes, in the beginning we need to have some support to make investment cases out of these projects. We need support to make improvements to even get lower costs for the future. On the other hand, if we do systems like that, we can guarantee stable costs over the next 30 years. And this is unique. No fossil fuel can guarantee constant costs over the next 30 years. So if you make this comparison, there's some pros and some cons. I think the biggest hurdle is when you make a big solar system, you need a lot of primary investment.
Right.
High first costs. And first costs mean risk exposure to the investors. So today, as they do not see too many projects of this type that already exist, they are considering, is this a risky investment? Do I have risk of loss? What will happen in different scenarios? And I see more this as a holding back point than the direct energy costs.
Right. So you preempted my question which was coming in on the financial risk associated with a renewable energy project, especially solar heating, where you have a payback time of about more than 10 to 15 years. And we see that there is initial hesitance from the financiers to finance these projects. So do you think that the adoption of energy policy target and the net zero decarbonization target and advancing it to 2040 brings in some kind of policy certainty for Austria? And will this actually translate into public as well as private funding for these renewable energy projects?
I think the thing that needs to happen is that solar heating becomes an investment role model like we've seen in solar PV.
Mm-hmm.
People need to understand, okay, this is reliable, this is working. I do have the customers, which is all the citizens of a city that need my heat. They probably need over the next 50 or 100 years, which is a very safe point of customer. And so the investors need to understand, okay, this is a possibility for diversifying our renewable energy portfolio. This is an opportunity where we have still the good projects out of the market. I've plenty talks with those guys from investment sectors that work in renewable electricity. They say all the good places for solar PV, windmills, hydro, they're all on and taken. Today we need to invest in the B and C and the D places in the ranking, which are much less attractive. In solar heating, in big solar, we do have 99% of the cities we use as part cities available still. And so we need to create the trust, and this is exactly what we need now, the support and the cooperation between the stakeholders of cities, of utilities, of governmental agencies, of the companies to say, yes, we make that role.
Right. So one question which always comes up when we talk to city planners is investing into district heating or decentralized heat pumps. And while this is a technical issue, would you see that investing in district heating is more feasible? Because some of my research shows that as specific heat demand would reduce over time for houses, district heating would become more of a liability, and possibly decentralized heat pumps are the way ahead to decarbonize heat. Any thoughts on that?
Definitely, because this is for sure a topic of discuss. When you see the future of district heating, you have several developments ongoing. Temperatures are getting to be lowered to make the systems more efficient, to have less losses, to allow better integration of renewables. Houses, as you say, are lowering the energy consumption, and we do as well see climate effects already. So, district heating company of Graz shared graphs showing the reduction of heating demand over the last 15-20 years, which is a significant number already.
Right.
But we still have plenty of flats, of houses within the city scope which are cheaper to district heating that are not yet connected. We do have a process where the city tries to use areas within the city scope to build their new quarters, new houses, That might not be true for all cities, but overall I see many places we have a kind of balance between the heat reduction factors and the incremental customers, and so the overall demand stays quite stable. And so I see this potential, but definitely we have to watch what's happening here. What if we move now to the heat pump scenario? When you look at today's energy profiles, and I just take Austria as an example, every heat pump you add means the critical periods where you need electricity is December, January, February, the really cold days. As previously said, this is not a time where it's easy to generate renewable electricity. So either we need to run that through seasonal storage, and then it's getting a quite complicated system, or you need to have, let's say, in the east or North Sea, big windmills, or in the Sahara, big solar CSP or solar PV plant, something like that. Bring that to Central Europe, bring that to Europe generally, and run this. Then we have a mega centralized system with a lot of missing resilience. Imagine if political things here happen, if big storms hit these infrastructures. This is very centralized systems, and I'm not the expert in all of that, but I have people talking saying, gosh, this means electric cables of sizes we never ever had before, because for electric transmission you need much more pipe size than for fossil fuels, all of that. So I think the electric pipe can add support on certain spots, but I do not consider it as a backbone.
But the backbone would be renewables. Yes. Thank you so much. Professor Getzinger, would you like to have any last words?
Let's stay optimistic.
Okay, that's a great message to get along. Any last words from you, Dr. Halter?
Well, I would say the last 10 years we showed that renewable technologies work. Now we have time to make them to the system backbone.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen, for your insights and reflections on decarbonizing heating in Austria. I hope our viewers will be inspired by the views of Dr. Christian Halter, a true solar ambassador, and Professor Getzinger, a social change agent. It's indeed been an honor and my privilege to reflect on some of the issues of heat decarbonization for a sustainable energy system in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.